Okay, so we just finished up the TV shoot of our show, Retiring Today with Loren Merkle. This show we titled The Presidential Election in Your Retirement Part 1. So we're gonna have two parts to this show because there's just so much content to cover, and who doesn't like to talk about all the what ifs of a presidential election year? Probably my favorite part about this show was Clint gave a board example of a real life scenario, a couple that he had met with who came into him for the very first time, and he was able to show them some real information about their portfolio. And the bad news of that conversation is that it was concerning information to them, meaning that they were taking way more risk than what they thought they should have been taking. The good news about this is they learned they were taking way more risk than what they should have been taking, and it's a great time with the market up for them to come to that revelation. The other thing I liked about this is Clint showed in the show, in his board example, some real scenarios about what they did to improve their portfolio and implement some strategies to boost their confidence as they go to retirement because they are looking to retire. So check out the show, click on the link, and I think you'll find some really good information in this show. Now, we talked a lot about volatility in this show, the volatile nature of the stock market as we go through a presidential election year. One of the things we didn't give a lot of in this show was optimism. There was a lot of information, a lot of content, but there wasn't a lot of results. So I'm going to give us all a dose of optimism right here, and we're going to do it with facts. If we go back to the year 1976, was a great year. That was the year I was born. There's 12 presidential elections over that time frame. 10 of those 12 presidential election years, the S&P 500 was up. Even better news, more optimism. 12 of those 12 years, the bond markets were up. So going all the way back to 1976, 12 presidential elections, the bond markets were up 100% of the time. Now that's great news for a lot of pre-retirees and retirees because we haven't seen a positive bond market. And when I say positive, I mean we can get some appreciation and decent yields out of bonds. We haven't seen that for a very long period of time. And for the last couple of years, bond markets have depreciated, not appreciated. So what we could be seeing, especially if interest rates help us out a little bit and interest rates start to tick down, like many people think is going to happen and what the Fed purports is going to take place, we could see a really positive bond market where pre-retirees and retirees can receive a decent amount of income from bonds, and they have an alternative investment with less risk than the equity markets. So that is some really good news. And even further, a lot of people are thinking not only what takes place in this year, the election year 2024, but what's going to happen in the year 2025. If we go back over the last 8 years after the election, 7 out of those 8 years, so this is going all the way back to 2000, 7 out of those 8 years, the S&P 500 has been positive. So that bodes well for 2025 based on that historical data. What we are going to see, and this is what we talked about in the show, is that we're going to have some higher ups and we're going to have some lower lows, and that's where the volatility comes into play. The volatility itself does not have to be a bad thing. As long as you construct a portfolio that is going to resist that volatility and probably even thrive in that volatility based on certain strategies that come in. A couple years ago, a couple came into the office and talked to us for the very first time. And this gentleman took the lead on their finances, and he has always invested his portfolio himself. As we were talking in this very first visit, what he told me is they have been retired for about 2 years. So this is 2022 when they came in. They've been retired for a couple years, and he said that it has worked out okay for them in retirement and what he meant as far as producing income from the portfolio and then being able to do the things that they want to do. They really like traveling, they really like cruises, and they felt comfortable spending the money on that because the portfolio has done okay until 2022. And what he said, he's always invested his money himself. And this year just feels different. 2022 just felt different to him. And he felt like he was kind of driving through a big storm and his hands were off the wheel and he just didn't know what to do. He was out of control for the first time in many years. So we talked about what his investment strategies were. And what we found out, all of us together, is he was employing the same investment strategies as what he's always employed. because it always worked for him. And we look at the distinct differences of what they have gone through. In 2020, he wasn't all that concerned. What he told me is that the whole world shut down, the markets blew up, that was expected, but eventually they came back up rapidly, and he was actually money ahead at the end of 2020, so he wasn't all that worried about it from a financial standpoint. But 2022 was really different, with the S&P 500 down about 20%, the NASDAQ down about 34%. He wasn't able to derive the income they needed from the portfolio and have it be sustainable with confidence over a long period of time. So we talked about some different strategies, and this is what we talked about: specific income segmenting strategies. Clint alluded to these strategies in his board example, as well as the importance of segmenting out a portfolio and being much more purposeful and having much more intention around each segment. When this couple, when they were 30 years old, they didn't care what was happening with the stock market. In fact, when we went through dips in the market, that was actually good for them because they were consistently putting in through their company in their 401k plan, and they were taking advantage through those contributions. When the markets were down, when they were 45 years old, it was still good for them because of the same phenomenon. And eventually the market came back up and they made even more money. And what they realized is that in retirement, it was a completely different game, where now they're taking money out of their portfolio and they go through a 2022 and they're still taking out the same amount of money to produce the same lifestyle that they've always wanted. Is it has detrimental impact on the longevity of their overall portfolio. The segmented approach really decreases that longevity risk when we go through poor times in the market. We know we're going to see a lot of recessions, a lot of down markets over the course of your retirement. Hopefully, over the course of your retirement, you see 4 to 5. On average, we receive recessions every 5 to 6 years. So we're going to see them. It's a matter of what happens when we do go through them. If we create a segmented portfolio, one of the most important parts of your portfolio, and this is key, is you need to have a foundational part of your portfolio. The foundational part is a part that no matter what happens with this crazy stock market and the crazy bond market, you are going to be able to deliver income from that piece. So we could call that your income segment as well. It's going to deliver income to you no matter what happens. There's a number of different investments you can use for that foundational piece of your portfolio right now. In fact, you have more options now with this foundational piece of your portfolio than what you've had in the last 20 years. You can use bank products, you can use CDs. A lot of banks are going to pay you 4 to 5% for a 12 to 13 month CD right now. That is an option. You can use fixed index annuities, you can use savings, checking account. All of those have good and bad to them. The one thing to think about with banks, and a lot of people are putting money in the bank right now with that 4 to 5% CD because it seems really attractive compared to what we've seen over the last 15 years. The last 15 years, the banks want to pay us 0 or close to 0 or less than 1%. So 4 to 5 seems amazing. In the interest rate environment that we're in right now, with interest rates, what seems like it's going to be towards a peak and probably going to be decreasing over time, locking in these higher rates can be a really attractive feature. One of the products that we can use to lock in some of these rates is a longer term product. A fixed index annuity, and there's a lot of fixed index annuities that are out there, can be a piece that you can use in this foundational bucket. Again, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of nuance to them. The one I'm going to talk about kind of works like this. You put your money into this fixed index annuity, let's say it's $100,000. The fixed part means that your principal is guaranteed. The index piece means your performance is tied to some kind of index. Today we're going to talk about the S&P 500 index, and the annuity is just the descriptor of what type of product it is. So $100,000 in the fixed index annuity, the S&P 500 goes down, you get a 0% rate of return, you're happy, you didn't lose. The S&P 500 goes up, then you get a piece of the up subject to the caps of that product. What we've seen in recent history is those caps have been really attractive. Let's call it 11%. So the way that works, the S&P 500 goes up 5%, you get the full 5%. The S&P 500 goes up 15%, you're capped at the 11%. But getting 11% or even 5% when the S&P 500 is up 15 or 5 respectively is a really good return on guaranteed money. Now, the disadvantage of fixed index annuities is there is a surrender charge if you take money out or more money out within the surrender charge schedule of that particular annuity. A lot of them are 10 years. So as an example, if you take more than 10% out within any year, within the first 10 years, then you could have a surrender charge. So you don't want to put too much money into any one particular type of a product, and that includes fixed index annuities as well. But if you can use it as a foundation, guarantee the principal backed by the full faith and credit of the insurance company, and you can strategically take money out when it does make sense. Two strategies are when the market's down, you didn't lose any money on the fixed index annuity, so you could take it out and use it as income. Or you don't need the income from that particular segment of your portfolio, you can take it out and buy back into the market with that piece, that 10%, and take advantage of the market when it's at a discount. So those are just two options that you can incorporate, and those are some of the strategies that you can build into your overall plan. So when we go through these downturns in the market, you have a source of potential income that was not negatively impacted by the market, or you have a strategy where you can take advantage of the discount in the market, which is something that a lot of retirees find it difficult to do because you're not consistently contributing to your portfolio anymore. So all of these strategies you have to be careful with. Fixed index annuities, just like CDs or savings account, are not right for everybody with this particular type of construction. So part of what you need to identify is which of those strategies are right for you, and then the intention behind them, how you're going to use those overall strategies. And that is the power of purpose. You have a purpose around how these types of segments of your portfolio are going to work and provide you with the income and the stability, which is going to provide you with the confidence that you need, not only to retire, but retire successfully and enjoy it to your full. So again, check out the show. If you have questions on the content that we talked about, you want to talk to a retirement planner specifically about your situation and what a portfolio construction could look like for you based on what you're trying to accomplish, it's very simple. Take advantage of the Retire Ready Call. All you have to do is go to retirereadycall.com to set up a time that is convenient for you and a retirement planner to have the conversation that can propel you to and through retirement.